Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. My name is Brandon Hayes. I am 34 years old, and the last thread of my relationship finally snapped at 11:07 p.m. on a Thursday. I was on the couch in our apartment in Baltimore, a book open but unread on my lap, my thumb stuck in the same chapter for half an hour. The silence in the living room felt like a physical weight, pressing against my ears, making the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the cable box clock sound unnaturally loud. The green digits clicked over from 11:06 to 11:07. Tanisha had said she would be home by 10 after a quick drink with her team. Her key still had not scratched in the lock. The text I had sent an hour earlier, "Hey, everything okay?" sat on read with no reply. When the intercom finally buzzed, the sharp sound made me jump. I pressed the button and leaned in. "Yeah," I said. "Brandon, it is me. Let me up," Tanisha said, her voice already edged, a brittle energy crackling through the tiny speaker. I could hear noise behind her, music, people talking, a car horn. I pressed the door release and sat back, the book sliding from my lap to the floor without me noticing. 2 minutes later, the apartment door swung open. She did not look like she had come from a quiet corporate drink at a bar down the street. Tanisha looked like a storm barely contained. She wore a little black dress I had never seen before, tight and sharp, with heels that said she expected to be watched. Her makeup was fresh, not smeared from a long day, but sharpened, redone, lips a bold dark red I had not seen since our early dates. The faint scent of someone else's cigarette smoke clung to her jacket, overlaying the ghost of expensive gin and a floral perfume I had bought her for her last birthday. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice as level as I could. "How was it?" "Fine," she said. The word landed like a slammed door. She tossed her clutch onto the kitchen counter. The clatter sounded too loud in the quiet apartment. I watched her fill a glass from the filter pitcher, her movements quick and jerky, the ice cubes knocking sharply against the glass. The worry I had been stewing in for the last hour began to curdle into something colder, more defined. "You said 10, I said quietly. I got worried. She let out a long, theatrical sigh, the kind she had started using more and more often, like she was dealing with a stubborn child instead of a partner. "It ran late," she said. "We lost track of time." "Who is we?" I asked, she still with her back to me, shoulders tightening for just a second. "Lena and Elliot from marketing," she said, "and a couple people from sales. Just some people. You do not know them." A chill settled deeper in my stomach. For months it had been like this, an expanding gallery of people I did not know, names that never came with real details. Vague plans materializing last minute, team happy hours that turned into all-nighters, networking events that always seemed to end at the same handful of clubs. Her phone, which used to light up with our silly memes and late-night photos, now lived face down on the coffee table, buzzing with messages from contacts saved as single emojis or initials. I had tried to be understanding. 6 months earlier, when Tanisha was promoted to junior brand manager, the change had seemed like a victory for both of us. We went out for dinner. She posted a photo clinking glasses with me and wrote, "To new chapters," with that big, genuine smile I used to see all the time. The promotion had come with bigger campaigns, more responsibility, and a new social circle. Louder, faster, obsessed with impression and image. Overnight, it felt like her world turned into a highlight reel aimed at strangers. I told myself it was a phase, that the excitement would settle. In those first months, I had been the anchor. I cooked meals she forgot to come home for, listened to her vent about office politics while she kicked off her heels and stretched out on the couch, handled the dry cleaning, the bills, the grocery runs, the quiet maintenance of our shared life. Once she had cupped my face in both hands and kissed my forehead, saying, "You are my safe harbor, Brandon." That memory now felt like a relic from another civilization. "Look," I said, standing up from the couch. My book hit the floor with a soft slap. I did not bother to pick it up. "It is a weeknight. You are dressed for a club, not a post-work debrief." "I'm not an idiot, Tanisha. Just be straight with me. What is the plan? Are you going back out?" She turned then, and there was no guilt in her eyes, no apology, not even discomfort. The look she gave me was pure annoyance, like I was a fly buzzing around a prize she was trying to enjoy. "Why does everything have to be an interrogation with you?" she said. "Yes, Lena and some of the others are heading to Lux." I said I would meet them. "It is past 11, I said. "So what?" Tanisha let out a short, harsh laugh. "Do I have a curfew now? Brandon, you are suffocating sometimes." The word hit me in the chest harder than any shout could have. Suffocating. For waiting up. For caring where she was. I took a slow breath, feeling something inside me begin to rearrange. "I'm not trying to suffocate you," I said. "I'd just like to know you were safe. I would tell you if I was going to be out all night." "Well, maybe you should get a life of your own," she snapped, snatching her clutch from the counter and checking her reflection in the dark microwave door. "Then you would not be so obsessed with mine." That was her latest refrain, get a life. My life for 3 years had been us. Our routines, our compromises, our shared plans. My friends had become our friends. My hobbies had shifted to fit around our schedule. I had seen all of that as building something together. She now framed it as a personal failing, evidence that I was too available, too focused on her. "So you're going to Lux," I said, my voice a flat line. "And you'll be back when—" Tanisha spun around, eyes flashing like I had just insulted her. "I do not know," she said. "When it is over. When I feel like coming home." She stepped closer to me, not in affection, but in challenge. "Look, let's get one thing crystal clear," she said. "I'm a grown woman. If I want to spend the night out, I do not owe you an explanation. Not to you. Not to anyone. This is not a custody agreement. I'm not your child." Her words hung in the air, thick and poisonous. They were not just about that night. They were a manifesto. With a few sentences, she dismissed every quiet worry I'd ever voiced, every text checking if she got home safe, every call when she was late and did not answer. She reduced 3 years of partnership to the dynamic of a prison guard and an inmate. Something inside my chest clicked into place with a perfect, terrible clarity. The restless noise in my head, the anxious questions, the looping justifications, the desperate wish to fix things, went quiet all at once. In its place, there was a still, cold space. In that space, there was only her statement, clean and sharp. "If I want to spend the night out, I do not owe you an explanation." I looked at her, really looked, not at the woman I had fallen in love with, but at the person in front of me. She was defiant, entitled, already halfway out of a door I had not realized she had opened. I did not shout. I did not plead. I did not ask again where she was going or who she would be with. I just felt done in a way I had never felt done before. I nodded once, a small, almost respectful motion. "You are right," I said. My voice sounded unfamiliar to my own ears, calm, hollow, steady. "You do not." A flicker of triumph crossed her face. She thought she had won the point. She thought she had set the boundary, and I had accepted my place. I held her gaze. "And then," I said, "neither do I." She blinked, the triumph wobbling. Confusion flashed in her eyes, then hardened into a sneer. She thought I was being petty, throwing a childish comeback. She did not hear the finality in it. She did not understand that I had just accepted her terms and applied them to myself. "Whatever," Tanisha said, rolling her eyes. She adjusted her dress like a queen, dismissing a servant. "Do not wait up." She opened the door and left, her heels clicking down the hallway, the sound fading quickly. The door shut behind her with a firm, definitive thud that echoed in the hollow apartment. This time, the silence that followed was not the anxious silence of waiting. It was the profound, echoing silence of an ending. I stood there for a full 5 minutes, listening to that silence, breathing it in. The ghost of her perfume and cigarette smoke still lingered in the air. Her words replayed in my head like a line of code. "If I want to spend the night out, I do not owe you an explanation." The more I heard it, the less it sounded like an attack, and the more it sounded like instructions. A strange, cold energy started to move through me, clearing away the fog. The grief was there in the distance, like a dark ocean waiting to pull me under. But for that moment, I stood on something solid, an ice flow of pure purpose. I knew if I did not move now, if I sat down and waited for her to come back, I would drown in that ocean. Instead, I turned and walked down the hallway to the bedroom we shared. The room looked suddenly unfamiliar. Our king-size bed sat neatly made, the mismatched nightstands on either side telling the story of who we used to be. Her side was cluttered with skincare products, jewelry dishes, and half-empty water glasses. Mine had a single book, my watch, and a small lamp. The framed photo on her dresser from a trip we took to the Outer Banks 2 years earlier showed us wind-whipped and laughing, her sunglasses crooked, my arm around her waist. The image now felt like a photo of strangers. I did not touch her things. They were no longer my concern. From the top shelf of the closet, I pulled down my old sturdy suitcase and a stack of flattened moving boxes I had kept from our last relocation. I unfolded them on the bedroom floor and taped them up, the sound of the tape ripping through the quiet like a metronome for the task I had chosen. I started with the closet. My shirts, my jeans, my jackets. I moved through my side with methodical efficiency, folding and stacking, not with sentimental care, but with the practicality of a soldier breaking camp. Each item went into the suitcase or into one of the boxes. The repetitive motions smoothed my thoughts. Every armful of clothes felt like another rope cut loose. Around midnight, I moved to my dresser. Socks, undershirts, the watch my father had given me when I graduated from college, a ring of keys I no longer used, all of it went into designated spaces. I paused for a second at a small shoebox filled with old ticket stubs, notes, and photos from the early days of our relationship. I opened it, glanced at the contents once, and then placed the entire box into one of the cartons without lingering. The apartment felt different as the night went on, like I was pulling myself out of its structure thread by thread. In the living room, I disconnected my gaming console, my headphones, my laptop. I left the large television we had bought together, the sleek stand she had insisted on, the decorative pillows she had obsessed over. My goal was not to strip the place bare. It was to remove the parts that were mine. Around 1 a.m, my phone buzzed on the counter. I walked over and picked it up. A message from Tanisha lit the screen, sent from the club. Lena's phone is dead. Charging at the bar. Just so you do not send the police. Having fun. Do not be mad. There were glittering emojis at the end. I stared at the words for a moment. The old version of myself would have felt a pain in his chest and typed back something like, "Okay, just be safe." The man standing in that kitchen felt nothing except confirmation. I did not answer. Instead, I went into my contacts and changed her name from Tanisha Red Heart to a single letter. Then I opened our banking app. I transferred my half of the last paycheck from our shared account into my personal savings, the one I had kept separate for emergencies. I cleared out my automatic transfers for joint expenses. My hands moved with the same detached precision as when I packed the boxes. The numbness was a kind of shield. It allowed me to move through the apartment like a surgeon removing organs from a body that was already legally dead. I took the small toolbox my father had given me when I moved out on my own, the Bluetooth speaker she always borrowed, my headphones, my vinyl records. I left the pots and pans, the dishware, the plant stand she loved. I was not looting our life. I was curating what I would need for the next one. In the hallway, I paused at the bookshelf. Our books were intermingled, a physical record of where our tastes overlapped and diverged. Carefully, I slid out the ones that were mine, technical manuals, science fiction novels, a set of essays my mother had given me. The gaps left behind made the shelves look like they had missing teeth. Her coffee table photography books and colorful paperbacks stood alone, suddenly looking more like props than possessions. By 4 a.m, 4 boxes and 1 large suitcase sat neatly stacked by the front door. The apartment looked as if a very specific kind of storm had rolled through, selective, precise. The areas that had been mine were emptied, leaving behind hollow outlines. Her spaces remained untouched. The place felt lopsided, poised on the edge of something irreversible. I sat on one of the stools at the kitchen counter, the surface now cleared of everything except the notepad we kept for grocery lists. For a few seconds, I just stared at the blank page, pen in hand. What was there left to say? All the questions, the accusations, the grief, all the why, and how could you phrases I had rehearsed in my mind over the last months evaporated. They all seemed meaningless under the rule she had written for us. I placed a pen to the page and wrote 5 words. Out indefinitely. No explanation needed. I did not sign it. It did not need a signature. The authorship was obvious. The sentence was a mirror, reflecting her own declaration back at her with exact precision. I tore off the page and propped it against the empty fruit bowl in the center of the counter. At 6 in the morning, as a pale gray dawn seeped into the sky over Baltimore, my friend Damon's truck pulled up in front of the building. I had texted him around 5. Need a favor. No questions. Damon and I had worked together on a construction job years back. He was the kind of friend who understood that sometimes the details could wait. When I opened the door, he took in the boxes, the suitcase, and the look on my face. He did not ask what had happened. You sure? Damon asked quietly as we carried the first box down the stairs. Yes, I said. I was surprised at how steady my voice sounded. I'm sure. He nodded and did not press further. We loaded the boxes and suitcase into the back of his truck in silence. The early morning air cool and damp around us. My arms ached, but it was a good ache. It felt like work, not weakness. When everything was in the truck bed, I went back up the stairs one last time. The apartment was almost unfamiliar now, a shell with her belongings arranged around sudden empty spaces. I walked through each room, checking for anything I might have missed, my razor in the bathroom, a jacket on the hook, a pair of sneakers under the bed. There was very little left that belonged to me. That felt right. At the front door, I paused. The note on the counter still stood where I had left it, stark against the bare surface. Out indefinitely. No explanation needed. For a heartbeat, I pictured her walking in at noon, tired and hungover, heels in her hand, expecting another round of arguments, another exhausted negotiation. Instead, she would find silence, absence, and 5 words echoing her own philosophy. I closed my eyes, inhaled, then opened them again and locked the door. Downstairs, I dropped my key through the mail slot to the inside. The small metallic clink felt like the last line being cut with a clean slice. Damon watched me climb into the passenger seat. As he pulled away from the curb, he glanced over. You okay, man? He asked. I will be, I said. This time, I believed it. The place Damon helped me move into was a furnished studio on the other side of the city. It was smaller and brighter than the old apartment, with big windows that let in morning light and bland beige walls that had never heard an argument. It smelled faintly of clean linen and fresh paint. The generic furniture was simple: bed, small sofa, narrow table. But the lack of history was its own kind of luxury. When Damon left, after a quiet clap on my shoulder and a call me if you need anything, the silence in the studio settled around me. This silence belonged to me. It was not the silence of waiting for footsteps in the hallway or the buzz of a key at the door. It was the silence of a blank page before the first word is written. I sat on the floor with my back against a box of books and watched the sunlight move across the wall. After a while, I took out my phone. Before any stray impulse could convince me to wait, to give her time to cool off, to hear her side, I opened my contacts and found the entry that now read only T. I tapped it and selected block this caller. Then I moved through every shared digital thread. Instagram, block. Facebook, unfriend and block. The share playlist on the music app, unfollow. The old couple photos that used to be pinned to the top of my profile, I archived them. By 8 in the morning, I had become a ghost in the machinery of her online life. The man who waited up, who sent concerned texts, who always responded, no matter how late, no longer existed in any system she could reach. The first 48 hours in the studio were the strangest I had ever lived. The habits of 3 years did not disappear overnight. My body still expected the soft sounds of another person, water running in the bathroom, the hairdryer, the rattle of keys, the random half-sung tune when she got ready. Instead, there was only the hum of the mini fridge and the distant murmur of traffic below my window. I did not turn on the television to fill the space. I let the silence bear down on me until it stopped feeling like an absence and became something more neutral than something almost comforting. I unpacked my boxes slowly. Books went onto the single shelf one by one. Clothes found their places in the narrow closet. The sterility of the furnished space was a relief. There were no photos of us on the walls, no couch we had picked together, no chair where she liked to curl up with her laptop. It was a clean room for my mind. The instinct to reach for my phone was the hardest to retrain. Walking past a funny billboard on my way to the hardware store, my first impulse was still, I should send Tanisha a photo of this. She would laugh. Standing in the grocery store, my hand hovered over a brand of cereal she liked. Each time, the old habit flared and then faded. Instead of texting her, I would go for a run until my lungs burned. Or I would cook a simple meal and sit at the table alone, tasting every bite without wondering if she would be late. I expected some dramatic breakdown at some point, an evening where the weight of everything would crush me and I would sink to the floor in tears. It never came. The grief was there, but it felt layered and distant like sediment at the bottom of a lake. The real mourning, I realized, had happened in slow motion over the months I had watched her change, when I was still beside her and powerless to stop it. The night I left had been paperwork, stamping a date on something that was already over. My phone, stripped of the constant notifications from her and her circle, became a quiet tool. On the first day, there was nothing. No calls, no texts from unfamiliar numbers. On the evening of the second day, the screen lit up with a call from a local number I did not recognize. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. A red dot appeared. I stared at it for a long moment, then swiped left and deleted it unheard. The rules were simple now. If it was not work or family, it did not exist. On the third day, 2 calls came from the same unknown number, followed by a text from a different number. "This is Lena," the message read. "Tanisha is freaking out. What'd you do? Call her." I read the words once. The framing was perfect. In their version of the story, I was the one who had acted, who had done something to her. Her declaration of independence, her nights out, my quiet departure, none of those were connected. I set the phone down, picked it up again after a moment, and blocked that number too. The outline of what was happening on her side came to me in fragments, like pieces of a puzzle delivered by accident. A week after I left, I logged into the shared cloud storage we had used for bills and apartment documents. I needed a copy of our old lease to send to the new property manager for my application. The most recent uploaded file was not a bill. It was a screenshot from her phone, saved to the drive 4 days earlier. The screenshot showed a text conversation between Tanisha and someone saved as J Blaze. His messages were tinted one color, hers another. The timestamps lined up with the night I left. J Blaze, 12:03 a.m. Last night was wild. You good? Tanisha, 12:15 a.m. I am not good. My boyfriend moved out. He took everything. J Blaze, 12:17 a.m. Damn, that is deep. Sorry about that. Tanisha, 12:20 a.m. Can I see you tonight? I really need to not be alone. J Blaze, 12:45 a.m. Hectic week, honestly. I am swamped. Maybe next week. The exchange was dated the day after her big speech about not owing anyone an explanation. The man she had been dressing for and staying out with. The one whose world she had wanted to impress had been good for late nights and wild stories, not for real consequences. As soon as things got messy, he became swamped. I downloaded the lease PDF I needed, then logged out of the cloud drive and unlinked my email. That chapter was closed. Another piece came from Damon when we met for coffee one afternoon near my new place. He stirred sugar into his cup, looking at me carefully. "Ran into Harold at the gas station," he said. Harold worked with one of Tanisha's friends. He said Tanisha is telling people you had some kind of breakdown, that you emptied the apartment in the middle of the night because you were jealous of her work friends. She is leaning hard into the abandoned by unstable boyfriend narrative. I took a sip of coffee and let the information settle. It did not surprise me. The version where she was the victim and I was the unreasonable one had always been easier for her to tell. "Let her," I said. I did not feel anger, just a distant resignation. Damon nodded slowly. He also said that guy she's been seen with, that promoter, Jerome something. Apparently, he has a reputation for chasing women who are already taken. Once they are single, he loses interest. Harold said he saw Jerome at a bar last weekend. flirting with someone else while Tanisha sat with Lena, looking like a storm cloud. I nodded again. It all fit together more cleanly than I would have liked. She is also asking everyone if they have heard from you, Damon added. She keeps saying she just wants an explanation. I took that from her, I said quietly. What do you mean? She said if she wants to spend the night out, she does not owe me an explanation, I said. So I accepted that as our new rule. Now she does not get one either. The attempts to break through my silence evolved in predictable stages. Phase 1 was logistics and leverage. About 3 weeks after I left, an email from her appeared in my inbox. The subject line read, "Practical matters." The body was written in the clipped, professional tone she used with interns. Brandon, we need to talk about the lease. You're legally obligated for your half of the rent until we formally break it. I also need you to arrange for the removal of your remaining furniture. I cannot live like this. Please be an adult and contact me to settle these matters. I expect a response. The letter was perfect on the surface, reasonable, formal, full of implied responsibility. It tried to pull me back onto the familiar battlefield of shared duties, where she could appeal to my sense of obligation. I had spent the first week in the studio reading lease clauses and local tenant laws in my quiet evenings. I opened a new email, addressed it to the property management company, and copied Tanisha. To whom it may concern, I wrote, please be advised that as of the date I vacated the premises at old address, I no longer reside there. My former partner, Tanisha Ward, remains in residence. I hereby relinquish all claims to the property and request that any further communication regarding this unit be directed to Ms. Ward. Attached is a signed letter of relinquishment and a copy of my identification. I attached the prepared letter, double-checked the address, and hit send. Less than a minute later, her email icon lit up with a series of replies. Do not accept this. This was not agreed. Brandon, answer me now. We have to discuss this. The professional mask had cracked in under 60 seconds. I created an email filter that sent any message from her address directly to an archive folder. I did not open it again. Phase 2 was emotional appeal. About a month after I left, on a rainy Wednesday, my phone buzzed with a call from an unfamiliar number. Some instinct made me answer. I pressed it to my ear and said, hello. Brandon, it is me, Tanisha said. Her voice was rough and thick, either from crying or from practicing sounding as if she had. Please do not hang up. Just listen, okay? I stayed quiet. I am at the apartment, she said. It is so empty. I cannot sleep. I keep hearing the door, and it is never you. What you did was so cruel, so final. I did not mean what I said. I was stressed. I was drunk. I was an idiot. That guy was nothing. A mistake. You are my real life. Please, I just need to hear your voice. I need you to tell me why. Why would you do this to us? To me? After everything? Just give me one explanation. One explanation, please. The irony of that plea was almost painful. One explanation. The very thing she had announced she no longer owed anyone. The old version of me would have broken down at that sound, would have gone back to the apartment and tried again. The man standing in the studio kitchen listened with the detached focus of someone analyzing a script. Beneath the tremors and the pauses, the message was clear. My new source of attention disappeared, and the old one is not responding. Restore my comfort. Tanisha, I said finally, my voice calm. You said if you want to spend the night out, you do not owe me an explanation. I accepted that. I am just following the same principle. That is not the same, she cried. You are twisting things. It is exactly the same, I said. You wrote the rule. I am just living by it. She started to speak again, but I moved the phone away from my ear. I let the words turn into distant sounds, then ended the call. I blocked that number as well. Phase 3 came through Lena. 2 days after the voicemail, my phone rang again with another local number. I answered without checking the screen, lost in a work email. Brandon, a sharp female voice snapped. What is wrong with you? Who is this? I asked. It is Lena, she said. Do you have any idea what you have done? You have completely destroyed Tanisha. She cannot work. She is crying constantly. You walked out like a coward over one stupid fight. What kind of man does that? Real men talk things out. I let her words hang in the air for a moment. Lena, I said finally, Tanisha set the terms of our relationship. I am just respecting them. What are you even talking about? She demanded. If I want to spend the night out, I do not owe you an explanation, I said, quoting Tanisha word for word. She made that very clear. I simply agreed. I do not owe her one either. This is insane, Lena said. You are twisting what she said to justify abandoning her. I am not justifying anything, I replied. I'm stating a fact. She drafted the policy. I enacted it. The consequences belong to her. Please do not contact me again. I ended the call and blocked her number 2. The final phase was the public confrontation. About 8 weeks after I left, on a bright Saturday morning, I walked out of the gym with my headphones in, my muscles pleasantly sore. I was thinking about nothing in particular, what I might cook for lunch, whether to call my brother later, when someone stepped directly into my path. I looked up and pulled one headphone out. Tanisha stood in front of me, but she did not look like the woman who used to come home flushed and laughing from happy hours. She looked frayed. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, dark circles sat under her eyes, and the oversized sweatshirt she wore looked like it had been grabbed off the floor. There were no carefully applied lashes, no bright lipstick, just a tired face and eyes burning with something raw. You left me, she said. There was no greeting, no pretense. The words were a bare accusation hurled at me in the gym parking lot. You left everything. I took a breath and studied her. There was no love left in me for her, no desire to fix anything. There was just a person in front of me who had authored my breaking point and now demanded an explanation for the result. I did not leave you, I said evenly. I exercised a clause you put in our relationship. She frowned. What are you talking about? The no explanation needed clause, I said. You were very clear about it. I just finally believed you. That is not fair, Tanisha said, her voice rising. That was said in the moment. You are taking it out of context to punish me. No, I said, shaking my head. I am not punishing you. I am honoring your words. You wanted total freedom from accountability. I gave it to you. Now I have it too. She stepped closer, her hand shooting out to grip my forearm. Her fingers dug into my skin. You cannot just walk away like that, she said. We have things to settle. The security deposit, the furniture, our history. We were together for 3 years. We lived a life together. Do you really feel nothing about that? I looked down at her hand until she let go, then met her eyes. She must have seen something there, a complete absence, perhaps. The place she used to occupy inside me was empty. There is no we anymore, I said calmly. There is you, and there is me. The connection you're talking about was ended when you told me that you did not owe me the basics of respect. The paperwork took one night to catch up. Her expression twisted, desperation finally curdling into anger. The soft, pleading tone vanished. You are a heartless man, she hissed. I hate you. I hope you end up alone forever. A small, almost involuntary smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. Not a smile of joy, but of recognition. There was the unvarnished core that had been hiding behind the performances and the tears. Noted, I said quietly. I put my headphone back in, turned away from her, and walked to my car. I did not look back as I pulled out of the parking lot. In the months that followed, life did not turn into a movie montage of instant happiness. It was quieter than that. I went to work. I came home to my studio. I cooked simple meals for one and ate them at the small table by the window. I bought a second-hand desk and set it up in the corner, turning part of the studio into a workspace. The routines I built were stripped down and deliberate. Some evenings, I found myself thinking about the old apartment, not with longing, but with a kind of clinical curiosity. I wondered if she still lived there, if she stared at the gap on the bookshelf where my books had been, if she had replaced the photo on the dresser yet. Then I would pull my attention back into the room I was actually in. The tiny studio with its cheap carpet and generic artwork was mine in a way the old place had not been for a long time. My friends adjusted around the new reality. Damon started inviting me to play basketball at a nearby park on Sundays. My brother called more often, asking about the studio, joking about how he had always known I could cook better than I let on. At some point, my mother asked gently on the phone, "Have you heard from her?" And I said, No, without elaborating. She let it rest. The most striking change was internal. For years, I had lived with the constant subtle tension of wondering what mood Tanisha would be in when she came home, whether my questions would be seen as caring or suffocating, whether that night's plan would shift to accommodate her impulses. Without that weight, my days felt strangely empty at first, then spacious. I could decide on a Friday afternoon that I wanted to visit my parents in another city for the weekend and simply go. Once, months later, Damon mentioned in passing that he had heard Tanisha was telling a different story now. She says you were controlling and emotionally distant, he said. She says you punished her for having a life. He watched me carefully as he said it, as if he expected anger. I just shrugged. She needs a version that lets her sleep at night, I said. Let her have it. On a clear autumn evening, I sat at my small table with my laptop open and an email draft on the screen. It was not for her or about her. It was to a part-time program I had been eyeing for months, a certificate in project management that could shift my career path. I wrote out my questions to the admissions office, edited them once, and hit send. As I closed the laptop, I realized something simple and obvious. The person who had told me I needed to get a life had accidentally given me the push I needed. I had gotten one. It just did not include her. The last image I had of Tanisha, standing in a parking lot, calling me heartless while the consequences of her own rules closed in around her, faded like an old photograph. There are nights when I still think about that Thursday, about the way she stood in the doorway in that black dress, cigarette smoke clinging to her hair, eyes already elsewhere, about the way the words left her mouth so easily. If I want to spend the night out, I do not owe you an explanation. There was a time when those words would have shattered me. Now, they feel like a line in a contract I finally chose to read carefully. I took her at her word. She did not owe me an explanation, and in the end, I did not owe her one either. I did not owe her my time, my presence, my slow erosion under a set of expectations that left no room for my own needs. I left a note that reflected her rule back at her and walked away. No explanation needed. In the quiet of my studio, with the window cracked to let in the nighttime sounds of the city, I sometimes hear the faint echo of my own footsteps from that night, moving from room to room, packing a life into boxes. Those footsteps do not sound like retreat anymore. They sound like the steady rhythm of a man finally walking in the only direction that made sense, out of a place where he was not respected and into a life where his own decisions were enough of an explanation. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.